Marcus the Hammer Rodriguez had just humiliated the quiet woman in front of the entire MMA class, flexing his muscles while the crowd laughed at her pathetic technique. But when 32-year-old Emma Walsh stepped forward and asked for a real demonstration, Marcus had no idea he was about to face a former Navy SEAL who had spent 8 years in special operations and was about to teach him the difference between show fighting and real combat. The Iron Phoenix MMA Academy in Phoenix, Arizona was Marcus Rodriguez's kingdom. At 28 with a 12-3 professional record and social media following of 200,000, he treated the gym like his personal stage. Every class was a performance, every interaction an opportunity to demonstrate his dominance. Welcome to Mysterious Human Stories. Before we continue this incredible tale of hidden strength and instant justice, tell me in the comments, from which city around the world are you watching today? And if you believe that real warriors don't need to brag, hit that subscribe button. What you're about to witness will leave you speechless. The Tuesday evening advanced class was packed with the usual mix of serious fighters, weekend warriors, and fitness enthusiasts. Marcus held court in the center of the mat, demonstrating a complex takedown sequence to an audience that hung on his every word. "This is how real fighters control their opponents," he announced, his voice carrying across the gym. "Power, technique, and the will to dominate. Not everyone has what it takes." His eyes scanned the class and settled on Emma Walsh, who stood quietly at the back of the group. She was small, maybe 5'4" and 130 pounds, with brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore plain black workout clothes and had the kind of unremarkable appearance that made people's eyes slide past her without stopping. Marcus had noticed her during previous classes. She was always polite, always focused, but never seemed to push herself the way serious fighters did. She went through the motions competently enough, but without the aggressive intensity that separated real competitors from casual participants. "Emma," Marcus called out, gesturing for her to come forward. "Why don't you help me demonstrate this technique? Show everyone how it's supposed to look." A few snickers rippled through the class. Emma hesitated for a moment, then stepped onto the mat. She moved with an economy of motion that Marcus dismissed as timidity rather than recognizing as efficiency. "All right, try to take me down," Marcus said, assuming a casual stance that was more pose than preparation. "Use that technique I just showed everyone." Emma positioned herself properly, checking her distance and footing. But instead of the explosive movement the technique required, she executed it slowly, methodically, as if she were practicing forms rather than attempting a real takedown. Marcus barely moved, letting her technique fail against his size and strength. "See what I mean?" he said to the class, not bothering to hide his condescension. "This is what happens when you don't commit. Fighting isn't about being careful and polite, it's about imposing your will." Lajati, the class laughed, some nervously, others with the cruel enjoyment that comes from watching someone else's embarrassment. Emma straightened up, her expression unreadable. "Maybe you could show me the right way," she said quietly. Marcus grinned. "Happy to, but I'll need to use some real intensity. You sure you can handle it?" Emma nodded. "I think I can manage." What happened next would be replayed on phones and social media for weeks to come. Marcus moved forward with the cocky aggression that had made him a local celebrity. He was bigger, stronger, and had years of professional fighting experience. This was supposed to be a quick demonstration of how the technique should really look. Emma waited until he committed to his attack, then moved. It wasn't the flashy, telegraphed movement of sport fighting. It was something else entirely. Precise, economical, and devastatingly effective. She stepped off the line of his attack, deflected his momentum, and used his own forward pressure against him. Marcus found himself airborne before he understood what was happening. He hit the mat with a solid impact that drove the air from his lungs and left him staring up at the ceiling lights, trying to process how a woman half his size had just put him on his back with what felt like minimal effort. The gym went completely silent. Emma stood over him, not gloating or celebrating, just waiting to see if he was ready to continue. "That's the same technique you demonstrated," she said calmly, "but timing and leverage matter more than strength." Marcus scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Lucky shot," he muttered, loud enough for the class to hear. "Let's go again." Emma shrugged. "If you want." This time Marcus approached with serious intent, abandoning any pretense of teaching. He shot in for a legitimate takedown, using the kind of speed and power that had won him fights in the professional circuit. Emma's response was equally serious. She sprawled back, controlling his head and arm, then transitioned into a position that left Marcus face down on the mat, with Emma applying a textbook rear-naked choke. The technique was flawlessly executed, with a kind of precision that spoke to years of high-level training. Marcus tapped out almost immediately, recognizing that Emma could have put him unconscious if she'd chosen to. The silence in the gym was deafening. Emma released the hold and stepped back, helping Marcus to his feet with the same quiet courtesy she'd shown when the exchange began. But now, every person in that gym was looking at her differently. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" asked Jake Morrison, a former college wrestler who had been training for 3 years. Emma hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I had some good instructors." Marcus, still processing his public humiliation, couldn't let it go.
What instructors? What gym? You can't just...
"AV Special Warfare," Emma said quietly. "SEAL Team 4, 2012 to 2020. 8 years active duty, including 4 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq." The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Cell phones appeared as people rushed to look up information. Whispered conversations broke out across the mat. Marcus stood frozen, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Emma Walsh wasn't just another fitness enthusiast trying MMA for fun. She was a former Navy SEAL, one of the first women to complete the brutal training program and serve in combat operations. The techniques she just demonstrated weren't learned in a civilian gym. They were refined in life-or-death situations, where failure meant death. "You're a SEAL?" asked Sarah Kim, a nurse who had been training for 6 months. "Like an actual Navy SEAL?" Emma nodded. "I'm a physical therapist now. I come here to stay in shape and work on techniques. I wasn't trying to hide anything. It just never came up." Marcus felt the eyes of the entire class on him, waiting to see how he would respond to this revelation. His carefully cultivated image as the gym's alpha had just been shattered by someone he'd dismissed as weak. "Why didn't you say anything before?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual swagger. "Because my military service doesn't define who I am now," Emma replied. "I'm here to train, same as everyone else. I wasn't looking to prove anything." The head instructor, Tom Bradley, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. "Emma, would you mind staying after class? I'd love to talk to you about maybe helping with some of our advanced techniques." Over the following weeks, Emma's presence transformed the dynamic at Iron Phoenix. Word spread quickly through the local MMA community that a former SEAL was training there, and the gym's reputation shifted from a place where tough guys postured to a facility where serious technique was taught and respected. Emma reluctantly agreed to lead a monthly seminar on real-world combat applications. Her classes were different from anything the gym had offered before, focused on efficiency over flash, on techniques that worked under stress rather than those that looked impressive. Marcus initially considered leaving the gym, unable to face the daily reminder of his public humiliation. But something about Emma's approach intrigued him. She never mentioned their first encounter, never used it to establish dominance or gain social status. She simply continued training with the same quiet focus she'd always shown. Eventually, Marcus approached her after one of her seminars. "Could you teach me some of those techniques?" he asked, swallowing his pride. Emma studied him for a moment. "Are you asking to learn, or asking to prove you can beat me next time?" The question forced Marcus to examine his motivations. "Learn," he said finally. "I think I've been confusing aggression with skill." "Good," Emma said, "because Real combat skills aren't about dominating other people. They're about being prepared for situations where technique and composure matter more than size and attitude. Their training partnership began awkwardly but gradually evolved into mutual respect. Emma found that teaching helped her process her own transition from military to civilian life. The discipline and precision of combat techniques provided a bridge between her past and present, allowing her to use her skills in a constructive way. 6 months later, Marcus faced his biggest professional fight to date, a bout that would determine whether he could move up to a major fighting organization. The opponent was a veteran with a reputation for breaking young fighters through psychological intimidation and technical superiority. In the locker room before the fight, Marcus felt the familiar anxiety that preceded big matches. But this time, instead of channeling into bravado, he applied the mental techniques Emma had taught him. Focus on the task, not the outcome. Trust your preparation. Stay calm under pressure. The fight itself was a revelation. Marcus fought with a composure and tactical awareness he'd never displayed before. When his opponent tried to rattle him with trash talk, Marcus remained focused. When the action got intense, he relied on technique rather than pure aggression. He won by submission in the 3rd round, using a technique Emma had shown him months earlier. After the fight, as Marcus celebrated with his team, he sought out Emma in the crowd. "Thank you," he said simply. Emma smiled. "You did the work. I just showed you some different approaches." "It was more than that," Marcus insisted. "You showed me what real strength looks like. It's not about proving you're better than everyone else. It's about being prepared and staying calm when it matters." The victory launched Marcus into a bigger fighting organization. But more importantly, it completed his transformation from a gym bully to a respected professional. He began speaking at schools and youth programs, sharing his story about the dangers of confusing aggression with strength. Emma continued her quiet training, occasionally accepting invitations to teach seminars at other gyms. She never sought the spotlight, but her reputation grew within the martial arts community as someone who understood the real applications of combat skills. Years later, when people would ask Marcus about the turning point in his career, he would tell them about the day he learned the difference between fighting and combat from a woman he'd underestimated. "I thought being tough meant being loud and aggressive," he would say. "But real toughness is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself because it knows what it's capable of. The strongest person in any room is often the one you'd never suspect." Emma Walsh never sought recognition for her military service or her skills. She simply wanted to train in peace and transition successfully to civilian life. But by refusing to be intimidated and demonstrating grace under pressure, she taught an entire gym community about the difference between appearance and reality. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. Some truths can only be revealed through action. And sometimes the most important education comes from the people we least expect to be our teachers. The small quiet woman in the back of the class turned out to be exactly the kind of warrior America's military produces. Skilled, disciplined, and humble enough to let her actions speak instead of her words. So now I ask you, have you ever witnessed someone being completely underestimated until they revealed their true capabilities? Have you ever seen real strength disguised as weakness? Share your story in the comments below. Because here at the Human Stories, we believe that heroes don't always look like what we expect. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they're small, and sometimes they're standing right next to us without saying a word about what they've done or what they're capable of. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you that real strength doesn't need to announce itself, subscribe and share. Help us honor those who serve quietly, fight only when necessary, and teach through example rather than words. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember, the most dangerous person in any room might be the one everyone overlooks. Show respect to everyone. You never know who you're really dealing with.